A pack of naive teenagers conspire to murder a mutual friend, whose aggressive demeanor has proven too much to handle anymore. I'm Screentime Coda, and today I am going to talk about the true story around the 2001 film Bully, directed by Larry Clark, most famous for his 1999 film Kids. Before I get into this video, I just want to give a trigger warning to anyone watching this. This true story and this film have depictions of SA and drug use throughout the film. Bully tells the story of Bobby Kent, a real-life rich kid with a bully mentality. If it isn't his, then he won't find a way to make it his, and that could include beating on his best friend Marty all the time. According to Tim Donnelly, who prosecuted all the conspirators for this murder, described Bobby as like Eddie Haskell from Leave It to Beaver. All the parents loved him, but the kids looked at him in a different way. Bobby and Marty had experimented with making gay porn movies, hoping to distribute them to the local shops. Neither Bobby nor Marty actually participated in any of these movies, but rather allegedly directed them and coaxed a Florida man in his 40s to perform on camera. Bobby tried to peddle a movie titled Rough Boys to porn shops across South Florida. None took them up on the offer due to the poor audio and video quality, as well as the lack of any sexual activities in the film beyond the man dancing nude and playing with this. In the beginning of 1993, Marty began dating Lisa Connolly. Frustrated by how much time Marty spent with Bobby, as well as Bobby's treatment of Marty, Connolly tried to distract Bobby from Marty by setting him up with her friend Allie Willis. Bobby and Allie dated for a few weeks, but she ultimately ended the relationship because he was abusive. In June, Marty confided to Lisa that Bobby had been abusive to him for quite some time over the years. Lisa tried to convince him to end the friendship, but Marty seemed hesitant. By this time, Lisa knew she was pregnant with Marty's child, refusing to believe it was Bobby's who SA'd her, and was determined to pursue a permanent relationship with Marty, who to her she described as the impossible dream, the god of the beach. Allegedly, Lisa decided that Bobby needed to be eliminated permanently, and began talking to Marty and other friends about murdering him. On July 13, 1993, Lisa called Allie and told her that Bobby was planning to come to Palm Beach, Florida, where Allie was living, to unalive her and her baby unless she returned to Broward County to date him again. Allie claimed Lisa asked her to come to her house to discuss murdering Bobby. Allie went to her house and brought two friends, her current boyfriend, Donald Semenik, and Heather Swallers. On the night of July 13, 1993, Marty, Donald, Heather, Lisa, and Allie all met with Bobby, but Marty, Donald, and Heather became uncomfortable and left. Lisa and Allie decided to lure Bobby to a new development under construction in nearby Weston, with the promise that he would be able to drive Allie's Mustang 5.0 and have sex with her. Lisa had brought along with her her mother's pistol, intending to kill Bobby while he was distracted by sexual activity with Allie, but was unable to go through with shooting him. Despite the failed attempt, Lisa still wanted Bobby dead. Seeking assistance, she contacted a self-proclaimed hitman named Derek Kaufman, who had been recommended to her by her friend Allie. The group met Derek at his home in Rolling Oaks, and they told him that they wanted a gun so they can kill Bobby that night. But Derek told them he could not get a weapon that quickly. So Allie, Lisa, Donald, and Heather then went back to Lisa's house and were joined by her cousin Derek Desverko. The group continued to discuss their plans and ultimately decided to go ahead with murdering Bobby the next night with Derek's assistance. On the night of July 14, 1993, the seven met at Marty's house and finalized their plans. Marty contacted Bobby and convinced him to come out with the group that night with the promise that they would race their cars and that Allie wanted to have sex with him again. The group assembled their weapons. Between them, they had two knives, a lead pipe, and a baseball bat. Around 11:30 p.m., they picked Bobby up from his home and headed out to the construction site. When they arrived at the site, Allie, in accordance with the plan, took Bobby off to a secluded spot where they were talking. Heather joined them there. While she and Allie distracted Bobby, Donald came up and stabbed Bobby in the back of the neck with a knife. When Bobby asked for Marty's help, Marty struck a knife in Bobby's stomach. Bobby yelled out an apology, but Marty continued to stab him. When Bobby tried to flee, Marty, Donald, and Kaufman followed him and continued their assault. Marty then slit Bobby's throat and hit his head against the ground. Derek then approached and hit Bobby in the head with a baseball bat, which was the final blow that ended up killing Bobby Kent. After this, Derek, Donald, Marty, and Kaufman helped dump Bobby's body at the edge of the shore in the marsh, in the belief that alligators would eat the decaying body. In the days following the crime, many of the conspirators confessed to various other people like complete fucking dumbasses. Lisa confessed to her mother, who contacted her sister, Derek's mother. Together, the two mothers called in their brother, Joe Scrima, who had friends in the police department and who they thought would, maybe know what to do with this murder that their kids just fucking did. Scrima's friends put him in touch with Detective Frank LaRaza of the Broward County Sheriff's Office, and a cooperative Derek confessed everything. As proof, he led LaRaza to Bobby's body, and that is how they were caught. Fucking dumbasses. Martin Puccio, a.k.a. Marty, was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. In August of 1995, he was sentenced to death by electrocution, plus a concurrent 30-year sentence for conspiracy. In 1997, the Supreme Court of Florida ruled that Marty should not be executed due to mitigating factors, so his death sentence was vacated and he was resentenced to life in prison, concurrent with his existing 30-year sentence for conspiracy, with parole eligibility occurring in 25 years. As of April 2024, he remains in custody at the Everglades Correctional Institution. Donald Semenek was found guilty of second-degree murder, but at his May 1995 sentencing, the judge chose to give him the equivalent of a first-degree murder sentence of life in prison. As of April 2024, he remains in custody at the Okeechobee Correctional Institution. Try saying that without laughing. Derek Kaufman was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. In June 1995, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole for 25 years, plus a consecutive 30-year sentence for conspiracy. As of April 2024, he remains in custody at the Marion Correctional Institution. The remaining 4 perpetrators have all been released from Florida prisons in February of 2004. Connolly, who, with Alice Willis, was the driving force behind the murder conspiracy, provided evidence and was found guilty of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. But at her July 1995 sentencing, the judge chose to give her the equivalent of a first-degree murder sentence of life in prison, plus a concurrent 5-year sentence for conspiracy. Her sentence was overturned on appeal as unduly harsh and was reduced in 1998 to 22 years. After having served less than 9 years, she was released in February of 2004. As of 2013, she was a certified optician living in Pennsylvania, was married and had a then 6-year-old child, in addition to her 19-year-old daughter with Marty, who was born while Lisa and Marty were both in jail pending their murder and conspiracy trials. Alice Willis, aka Allie, the former prostitute who lied to then-boyfriend Donald that Bobby had sexually assaulted her, and who, with Lisa Connolly, was the driving force behind the murder conspiracy, was found guilty of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. In May 1995, she was sentenced to 40 years in prison, plus a concurrent 15-year sentence for conspiracy. The murder sentence was reduced on appeal to 17 years, to be followed by 40 years of probation. After having served less than 7 years, she was released in September 2001. As of 2013, she was a homemaker and parent living in Florida. Derek DeZverko, who led police to Bobby's body and provided other evidence, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. In May of 1995, he was sentenced to concurrent terms of 11 years in prison. After having served less than 5 years, he was released in October of 1999. As of 2013, he was a former long-haul truck driver who had settled in Missouri in 2009 as a single parent to raise his daughter. Heather Swallers, who cooperated with police and provided evidence, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. In May of 1995, she was sentenced to concurrent terms of 7 years in prison. After having served less than 3 years, she was released in February of 1998. As of 2013, she was living in Georgia. The true story and the film that came about are both dark and haunting because, again, these are just all young kids, ages 17 to 20 years old. But the parents didn't really help out much, as Marty's parents would see him regularly come home from hanging out with Bobby, covered in bruises, covered in blood. They just always assumed that Bobby just wasn't a good person, but did nothing to help their son before it was even too late. Then Bobby's parents just thought Marty was a bum, and he was going nowhere in life, and thought that their son was the sweet, perfect little fucking angel, because that's what Bobby wanted them to think. He also got into their heads telling them, yeah, Bobby's not a great person, but he's still my friend. Let's talk about the film. The film was originally slated to go into production in the mid to late 90s, before the Columbine High School shooting, but financiers backed away in the wake of the events, Screenwriter David McKenna said that the Columbine shootings, along with other high school gun related tragedies at the time, were justification for the script, commenting, "It's time that we woke up to the way many of our kids are living." Several drafts of the screenplay had been written, all of which were turned down by Larry Clark in favor of filming scenes straight from Schutt's book, which featured real court testimonies and first-hand accounts of the murder. Clark said an early screenplay draft removed any homosexual subtext, particularly the implication Bobby is gay and closeted, but Clark tried to put it back in. Now, let's get into the casting of this film. Before Brad Renfro was cast as Marty, Jake Gyllenhaal and Ashton Kutcher were actually considered for the role of Marty. Clark sought Nick Stahl for the role of Bobby, though Nick Stahl initially thought he was not right for the role, saying, "If you drew the polar opposite of who I was at that time, it would probably be Bobby Kent. I mean, I was rail thin, I'd worked out twice before the movie started, so clearly it wasn't any kind of physicality that intrigued Larry." Though Lionsgate Films thought the roles of Bobby and Marty were miscast, Clark embraced the casting of Renfro and Stahl in their respective roles because he wanted to subvert audience expectations of what a bully looks like. Casting director Carmen Cuba said the idea of who is a bully and who gets bullied, in this case, it felt unusual to make the choice this way, but that made it more interesting and more layered. Zooey Deschanel was originally set to play Allie Willis, but ended up doing another film that was also shooting in Florida at the same time. Jared Leto was also considered for the role of Derek Kaufman before Leo Fitzpatrick, who had previously worked with Clark on Kids, was casted in the role. Daniel Franzese, who plays the cousin Derek, had no prior screen credits and was scouted by Cuba while singing at a talent show night at a Florida bar. Clark said that the casting of Bijou Phillips helped the film get greenlit, saying she hadn't acted, but that name, because she was in the paper every day for being a club kid, that name got us the money to get financed and shoot the movie. Principal photography of Bully began August 21st in 2000 in southern Florida. Filming took place at many of the locations where the real-life incidences occurred. The crew was originally given 40 days to complete filming, but that was reduced to 23 days due to budgetary restrictions from Lionsgate. The shoot was said to be chaotic due to a compressed production schedule, harsh weather conditions, and some behind-the-scenes drama, including Brad Renfro getting arrested for trying to steal a yacht. Kids. The plainclothes officer who arrests Marty in the film is actually Frank LaRaza, the same police detective who arrested the real Marty Puccio in 1993. Several production assistants on the film had actually attended high school with the actual perpetrators of the film. So yes, in my opinion, this film stuck really close to the real-life crime, but many critics and audience members not liking the film, saying it was pretty much 90% sex and 10% story. But in reality, this is what was really going on with these kids. It was the 90s. Kids were experimenting with all kinds of things, but to think that they were going to experiment with murder, it led right to their downfall. If only Marty's parents just listened to him when he wanted to leave, then maybe things would have turned out different for this group of kids. But I guess we'll just never know what the other outcome could have been, sadly. I give this movie a 4 out of 5 stars. It is the only Larry Clark movie that I actually liked. It is very dark, it's disturbing, but this is the reality of what these kids went through and went through with. Have you seen the movie Bully? If so, what are your thoughts on the film? Let me know down in the comment section below. Until next time, I'm Coda. You guys enjoy your movie. Hit that like, leave that follow for more content.